State of cannabis.
This is the State of Cannabis News Digest, a roundup of this week's key developments in the cannabis industry.
This week, cannabis policy is moving and colliding on almost every level of government. From the White House and the U.S. Senate to state courts, legislatures, and voters, the rules around marijuana are being challenged, rewritten, and, in some cases, put on hold. Tonight, we're looking at what that means, legally, politically, and practically, across the country. We'll start with Washington, then move through Florida, the Midwest, the Northeast, and end with what these changes mean for patients, parents, and consumers.
And now here is the deeper look at the key events in the cannabis world this week.
At the federal level, the U.S. Senate has confirmed Sarah Carter as Director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, the position often referred to as the nation's drug czar. The confirmation vote was 52 to 48, and Carter is expected to be sworn in shortly. Her arrival comes at a pivotal moment. According to reporting, Donald Trump signed an executive order last month directing the Attorney General to complete the process of moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act. During her confirmation hearings, Carter told senators that cannabis reform can be bipartisan. She has publicly supported medical marijuana and said she does not oppose legalization if it is monitored. At the same time, she has emphasized concerns about illegal grow operations and contamination in illicit cannabis supply chains. The role comes with limits. Federal law still requires the drug czar's office to oppose legalization of Schedule 1 substances without FDA approval and restricts funding for research tied to legalization. How Carter navigates those constraints, alongside a potential rescheduling, will shape the federal tone heading into 2026.
Florida remains one of the most active battlegrounds in the cannabis debate, and the pressure points are showing up in courtrooms, on roadways, and inside family law. First, the Florida Supreme Court is once again weighing whether voters will even see a recreational marijuana amendment in 2026. The Attorney General has asked the court to block a revised legalization proposal, arguing it misleads voters about public use, violates the state's single-subject rule, and conflicts with federal law. The amendment is backed by Smart and Safe Florida and funded by major players in the medical marijuana industry. Supporters point to polling showing broad bipartisan support. Opponents, including business and anti-drug groups, argue the state would be forced to license activity still illegal under federal law. At the same time, the campaign is racing to validate hundreds of thousands of petition signatures before a February deadline. Recent invalidations have already triggered another lawsuit, adding more uncertainty. The court's decision, expected later this winter, will determine whether the issue reaches voters or stays tied up in the legal system. Meanwhile, lawmakers are also moving on enforcement. New bills would make it illegal to carry open containers of marijuana, hemp, or THC products in vehicles, similar to alcohol laws, and would restore police authority to search vehicles based solely on the smell of cannabis. Supporters say it's about impaired driving and clarity for law enforcement. Critics, including medical marijuana patients, warn it could reopen the door to unnecessary searches and punish people legally using state-approved medicine. If passed, the bills could affect nearly 1 million registered patients, with penalties ranging from citations to permanent loss of medical access. And finally, another Florida bill targets family courts. Lawmakers are considering protections that would prevent courts from denying custody or visitation solely because a parent is a registered medical marijuana patient. The bill makes clear that patient status alone should not be treated as neglect, while still allowing courts to intervene if a child's safety is genuinely at risk. Taken together, Florida's cannabis debate isn't just about legalization. It's about how the law treats people who already live under it.
As you've been hearing, cannabis policy isn't slowing down, it's getting more complex. And in Texas, those decisions are already being made. Texas is at a real turning point, expanding medical access, overhauling hemp regulation, and adapting to federal changes that no longer dictate every move states make. That's why the Texas Cannabis Policy Conference is happening now. Hosted by the Texas Cannabis Policy Center, the conference returns January 29th through 31st at the Thompson Conference Center on the University of Texas at Austin campus. Under the theme Maintaining Momentum for Effective Cannabis Policy, lawmakers, regulators, attorneys, physicians, researchers, and local officials come together for serious, nonpartisan conversations about regulation, enforcement, public safety, and market stability. Not ideology, not hype. This year's programming focuses on how cannabis policy actually works in practice, from evolving oversight and enforcement roles to the real-world impacts on patients, businesses, and communities across Texas. Registration is open now at texascannabisconference.org. Students attend free with registration. That's texascannabisconference.org, where Texas comes together to get cannabis policy right.
Across the Midwest, cannabis policy is less about expansion and more about adjustment. In Indiana, a new bill would decriminalize possession of up to 2 ounces of marijuana and raise the felony threshold to 4 ounces. The proposal, House Bill 1191, is sponsored by State Representative Mitch Gore and would not legalize retail sales or open dispensaries. Supporters frame it as a way to reduce the long-term consequences of low-level, nonviolent charges, especially during routine traffic stops. Politically, it faces an uphill battle in a legislature where Republican leadership has opposed marijuana reform, despite polling that shows broad public support. In Michigan, the cannabis industry is fighting a new tax in court. A 24% excise tax on wholesale marijuana took effect January 1st, and the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association argues it violates the voter-approved legalization framework passed in 2018. Judge Seema Patel has allowed the lawsuit to proceed, ordering discovery to examine whether the tax will raise prices, harm small businesses, and push consumers back to the illicit market. The tax is being collected while the case moves forward, and the association is also seeking review from the State Court of Appeals. And in Ohio, the market is already fully up and running. The state's first full year of recreational marijuana sales brought in about $836 million in 2025. Combined with medical sales, Ohio's legal cannabis market cleared $1 billion for the year. Prices are falling, dispensaries are expanding, but policy is tightening. Governor Mike DeWine has signed Senate Bill 56, which lowers THC limits, bans smoking in most public places, restricts intoxicating hemp products, and removes certain anti-discrimination protections. A group called Ohioans for Cannabis Choice is now pushing a referendum to block the law before it takes effect in March.
In the Northeast, the cannabis conversation is turning on procedure and timing. In Massachusetts, election officials are reviewing a challenge to a ballot initiative that would roll back major parts of the state's adult-use marijuana system. Opponents claim paid signature gatherers misled voters by tying the petition to unrelated issues like housing or fentanyl. More than 78,000 signatures were certified in December, enough to keep the process alive. But hearings scheduled for January 12th and 13th will determine whether the initiative moves forward. If it survives, lawmakers have until May to act, or the campaign will need another round of signatures to reach voters. In New York, the focus is narrower, but no less consequential. A new bill would delay quarterly cannabis tax filing deadlines, giving distributors more time to pay. The proposal doesn't change tax rates, only timing, and is meant to ease cash flow pressures in a market where dispensary openings have lagged and inventory has piled up. A similar bill was vetoed last year. Whether this version survives could signal how much flexibility Albany is willing to offer the still-developing industry.
Kentucky is moving on two parallel tracks, expanding medical access while debating recreational rights. The governor announced approval of the state's first licensed medical marijuana processor, Bison Infused in Dayton. That approval is key. Processors turn harvested cannabis into tested, packaged products that can actually stock dispensary shelves. Kentucky's first licensed dispensary opened last month, with more expected as product moves through the supply chain. Patient participation is rising, with more than 17,000 approved cardholders and hundreds of healthcare providers issuing certifications. At the same time, Representative Nima Kulkarni has introduced a bill that would ask voters whether to amend the state constitution to guarantee certain cannabis rights for adults 21 and over, including possession, use, and limited home cultivation. The proposal would not automatically create a commercial market. Lawmakers would still control licensing and regulation. With a Republican majority skeptical of legalization, the immediate question is whether the bill is allowed to reach the ballot at all.
From Washington to state houses and courtrooms, cannabis policy in 2026 isn't moving in one direction. It's moving in many, often at the same time. Legalization, decriminalization, taxation, enforcement, and personal rights are all being renegotiated, sometimes by voters, sometimes by judges, and sometimes by lawmakers trying to catch up to markets that already exist. We'll keep tracking where those lines get drawn and redrawn. This was the State of Cannabis News Digest, available weekly. You can listen to us on all main podcast platforms. To make sure you don't miss out on the latest updates and in-depth analysis of the cannabis industry, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. By subscribing, you'll get notifications for each new episode, helping you stay informed and ahead in the ever-evolving cannabis market. Join us next Saturday for more insights. Until then, keep thriving and stay green.